Good afternoon and good morning to you. You are there right now and you are monitoring, observing what is going on in the political landscape over there. So let's begin with that very important question. What have you witnessed so far when it comes to voter behavior and election administration?
Well, there's so much that we've observed since we arrived in the US. So let's look at the conduct of early voting. One of the policies and practices in the US is early voting. So early voting allows registered voters to cast their vote prior to election day, which is November 5th. And the reason why early voting is introduced in the US system is to allow people ease the process of voting, because on election day, it will decongest the polling stations, but also give people an opportunity who maybe by virtue of their work will not be available on election day. Because in the US, there's no restriction of movement on election day. Election day in some states is not a public holiday. And so people are able, to cast their vote. And so far, over 70 million of the about 150 million people who are expected to cast their vote, have voted. In Nigeria, soonest, the National Assembly is currently considering an early voting bill, especially in the Senate, sponsored by Senator Adua. And that will open up the process to allow security agencies, medical practitioners, election observers cast their votes before election day. The second big sort of observation is the issue-based campaigns that have shaped this election. That despite all the political intrigues, we have three key issues that will shape the way voters are going to cast their vote. And you can even say four. The first one is the economy. The second one is immigration. The third one is reproductive rights, and specifically abortion. One other issue that will shape the election is about Gaza. So you listen to the debates and you listen to the campaigns, you see how both the voters are so well conscientized to the extent that they are focused more on the fundamental issues. And so we're seeing, single issue voters. Americans are either voting for abortion rights or they are voting for immigration, or even how the US has handled the Israeli and Gaza conflict. And that's so one of the things that we've observed. Another issue is the US is such a decentralized system of elections. You have 50 states. Each of these states have their own separate electoral commissions. They have their own electoral laws and guidelines because of the devolved nature. And you look at the way the elections are managed. They are managed by what you call the secretaries of the State Board of Elections. And in some states, these secretaries are elected. They are not appointed. They are elected, but they are still able to perform their function with the highest level of transparency and accountability. One interesting thing from this election, which is a huge source of concern, is you see how, the issue of accepting electoral outcomes, has come up in this election. And there are doubts and distrust in the system because, one of the parties and the candidates seem to have questioned the transparency of the process in some of the states. And that really puts electoral integrity and transparency, to test in this election.